Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. Mark Twain writing a novel or learning is like driving at night in the fog. You can see only as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. ELDOCTOROW, author deconstruction is best thought of as exploration. This is where we throw a lot on the wall to see what sticks, where we flip things upside down and look at what the outliers are doing differently and what they're not doing at all. First and foremost, it is where we answer the question, how do I break this amorphous skill into small, manageable pieces? Just as with literal deconstruction taking a building apart, for example, you need the right tool for the job. Sometimes it is a hammer, sometimes it's a saw, sometimes it's both. In this chapter, we'll look at 4 primary tools. Each will be explained using real-world skills for context, reducing how to learn 1,945 Japanese 7 characters. Interviewing how to shoot a basketball 3-pointer. Reversal, how to build unparalleled fires. Translating, how to dissect the grammar of any language in 1-2 hours. Reducing Japanese characters. The ecstasy of finding my Joyo Kinji poster was followed by the crushing task of learning, 1,945 characters. That's more than 81 times the English Roman alphabet, and we're not talking about ABCs. The most complicated letters in English, like E and W, have 4 strokes. Many Japanese characters have more than 15 strokes, the above GI of design meaning sacrifice 8 at 17, and it just gets worse. Each stroke has to be in a specific order, so that you can write and, more important, read the equivalent of cursive. These 1,945, though finite, quickly become overwhelming. Unfortunately, I was required to take a shadow calligraphy class, and I learned that each character can be broken into components, far left, top, middle, etc. These Lego pieces, referred to as radicals, form the building blocks from which all kanji are made. There are 214 radicals. They provide clues to both meaning and pronunciation, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Radicals are also always written in one order, left to right and top to bottom. This all turns an impossible task learning 1,945 characters into one that some people can complete in less than 2 months. Take, for instance, the radicals found in the character I, which means love, as an Aishairu. I love you. To remember how to write this character, one might imagine clawing 1 through a roof 2, to get to a heart 3, that's running away for says Lamor. The key was peppering my calligraphy teacher with questions, which leads us to the next complementary tool, interviewing. Interviewing, shooting basketball 3-pointers. You're doing a terrible job on your drink. Startup veteran Bobby Nivai was finishing a steak, as I took my first sip. We were well en route to inebriated at Agi, a tiny Japanese restaurant tucked in between the Castro and Mission districts of San Francisco 10. Dajin Joe was the perfect fuel for our discussion of odd skills and physical tracking. He had recently picked up Olympic lifting for fun, and I had a glucose monitor implanted in my side to track spikes in blood sugar. At one point, Nivai randomly offered, if you ever want to deconstruct basketball, I have the DVD for you, Better Basketball. Ever since my 7th grade PE teacher told me I dribbled like a caveman I'd written basketball off. So thanks, but no thanks was my answer to Nivai. But lo, 3 years later I found myself watching a Lakers game with my friend Kevin Rose and his fiancée, Daria, a Lakers fanatic. Their dog even had a Lakers jersey on. I had an epiphany, even if I have zero interest in playing basketball, perhaps learning the fundamentals over a weekend would allow me to love watching it. After all, it is the 3rd mostly popular sport in the United States. That's when I asked Nivai to point me to the master, Rick Corbett, the founder of Better Basketball. Rick has coached entire teams to shoot better than 40% for 3 consecutive seasons. To put that in perspective, in the last decade, only one NBA team, the Phoenix Suns, came close to 40% from the 3-point line. To dissect his unusual success, I started by emailing him interview questions, the answers to which I'll share with you shortly. But let's start with the general process. First, create a list of people to interview. If you're going for high-level athletics, for instance, 1. Use Wikipedia to find out who was the best or second best, which is often ideal in the world 5-10 years ago, or 2-4 Olympics ago, since those currently in the limelight are less likely to respond. 2. Search Google for my closest city sport Olympian or world champion or world record. Hypothetically, I might look for San Francisco bobsled Olympian, which gets me to a team Dr. Perfect for a first lead. Next, make first contact and provide context. Do me a favor is not a compelling pitch. The proposed interview should somehow benefit your contact. The path of least resistance is to freelance write for a blog, newsletter, or local newspaper and do a piece on this person and his methods, or to quote him her on a related topic, as an expert predictions for Winter Olympics, for instance. Once you're in the door, ask your expert all the questions you'd like. Are you terrible at writing? No problem. Make a Q&A format, and simply print the relevant questions and answers when to. Last, ask your questions. When I was looking into ultra-endurance for the 4-hour body, I sent different combinations of the below questions to people like the legendary Scott Jurek, who won the Western States 100, a mountainous 100-mile race, a record 7 times. Who is good at ultra running despite being poorly built for it? Who's good at this who shouldn't be? Who are the most controversial or unorthodox runners or trainers? Why? What do you think of them? Who are the most impressive lesser-known teachers? What makes you different? Who trained you or influenced you? Have you trained others to do this? Have they replicated your results? What are the biggest mistakes and myths you see in ultra-running training? What are the biggest wastes of time? What are your favorite instructional books or resources on the subject? If people had to teach themselves, what would you suggest they use? If you were to train me for 4 weeks for a fill-in-the-blank competition and had $1 million on the line, what would the training look like? What if I trained for 8 weeks? In the case of basketball, I started by sending Rick 4 questions related to shooting. 1. First, what are the biggest mistakes novices make when shooting or practicing shooting? What are the biggest misuses of time? 2. Even at the pro level, what mistakes are most common? 3. What are your key principles for better, more consistent shooting? What are they for foul shots, free throws versus 3-pointers? 4. What does the progression of exercises look like? I received his email responses and, 2 days later, hit 9 out of 10 free throws for the first time in my life. Then, on Christmas Eve, I went bowling and realized that many of the same principles applied. I scored 124, my first time over 100 and ever above my usual 50, 70.13. Upon returning home, I immediately went outside and sunk the first 2 3-pointers of my life. For Lakers games with the Roses, I now see a ballet of kinesthetic beauty that was invisible before. That's a hell of a lot of fun. For those interested, see Rick's 3-pointer tutorial in the appendix. Reversal, building better fires. How would you like to light a fire perfectly and have it burn for 3-7 hours without adding more wood? It requires forgetting everything you've learned about starting fires. Now, I can make a raging furnace of epic proportions, a crackling and screaming banshee of life-giving heat, but it lasts for a euphoric 5 minutes. Then the real fun begins, the fiddling and fussing, poking and prodding every 5 minutes thereafter for the next hour to keep the charred remains clinging to life. I was in the Boy Scouts and learned the ropes, tons of paper and tinder at the bottom, building upward like a teepee with the smallest kindling at the bottom and the biggest logs at the top. It's how fires are built, right? Let's call this the teepee fire. The alternative is the upside-down fire. To learn the manliest of the manly arts, I looked to one of my most feminine readers, Marty. She was seeking the best method of starting fires at her mountainside cabin, and the final result was as odd as it is effective. The method is simplicity itself, do exactly the opposite of the teepee method. 1. Put the largest logs at the bottom, ensuring there is no space between them whatsoever. 2. Lay a second perpendicular layer of smaller logs on top of the largest, again ensuring there are no spaces between them. 3. Repeat with perpendicular layers until you get to the top, where you will put strips of crumpled paper in at the very top. 3. 5 fire starter squares my preference, or fire starter oil sticks. From bottom to top, I like to use large logs, unsplit, split logs, sapling wood, cedar shingle wood, then paper and fire starting squares. The finished appearance. Prepare for much more heat. Once about 75% of the shingle wood is burned, the fire will start to give off a lot of heat. The flame from the top warms the air in the flue, and creates a more efficient current of air for cross ventilation, and there is little warmth wasted. 3 more benefits: no smoke or minimal smoke. This is related to the thermodynamics of the flue air being heated faster, based on explanations I read 1.4. No backdraft smoke into the house. No management. Assuming you don't have gaps between logs, the fire will burn beautifully for 3-7 hours, depending on the amount of wood used. This alludes to one potential drawback: you must start with a substantial amount of wood. No ashes. This amazed me. It all burns down to nothing. No waste at all, as nearly every fiber is converted into heat. It's beautiful. In fact, there are some things to keep in mind. 1. The upside-down fire won't look like much for about 20 minutes. Be patient. Their goal is to create embers that then fall to the layer below, which is why there cannot be any spaces between logs. Real flames take a while. 2. Ensure that the paper strips are bent, or otherwise prop up the fire starting square sticks so they don't lie flat on the shingles or the layer below. If you don't have this slight spacing for the fire starting material to catch, you will have trouble lighting the fire and get frustrated. This is the only place where a little space is good. Sometimes, whether in the world of fire making or cooking, finding the path of least resistance is as easy as googling backward, upside down, or reverse, plus whatever skill you're deconstructing. Translating the grammar of any language. If the language stuff gets too dense, skip to learning to taste. Where for inspiration Nick Kent, way Nickhods von Saint Genin. He who doesn't know foreign languages knows nothing of his own. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe Cardinal Giuseppe Mezzofanti, born 1774, was called the devil on many occasions. The charming Italian could speak at least 39 languages and, by some accounts, had been tested in 72. As arguably the world's most famous hyperpolyglot, he was also systematic. First, he learned languages in families. Second, and related to deconstruction, instead of using grammar books, he had native speakers of each language recite the Lord's Prayer. This short passage gave him an overview of nearly all important grammatical structures: direct object, indirect object, noun cases, possessives, etc. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. 1.5. I have used a nearly identical approach for decades, the 12 sentence. By simply asking, how do you say sentence in your language? Would you mind writing that down? I can uncover the soul of a language and estimate how long it would take me to learn it. Pictures A and B, below, tell the story of a Ukrainian woman who taught me Cyrillic in 30 minutes, and the whole conversation was 2 hours long. Here are the 12 sentences. The deconstruction doesn't. The apple is red. It is John's apple. I give John the apple. We give him the apple. He gives it to John. She gives it to him. Is the apple red? The apples are red. I must give it to him. I want to give it to her. I'm going to know tomorrow. I have eaten the apple. 16. I can't eat the apple. The benefits of these few lines can be astonishing. I was once en route to Istanbul, and did the 12-sentence audit with a friendly Turk across the aisle. There was a layover before my connecting flight, and I wandered over to a Rosetta Stone language kiosk. I asked if I could try their Turkish demo, which the woman was kind enough to let me test drive for 15 minutes. I skipped to a level 3 test, which is intended to be taken after 150 hours of study, and scored more than 80% correct. In addition to saving me time, that 30-minute, 12-sentence audit saved me $399. Not bad, right? Keeping things as simple as possible, I'll explain the last 5 sentences, which have the greatest application to other fields, including cooking. Get ready, this is important. The importance of helpers and early wins. Remember learning how to conjugate verb tables in high school? I do. It was horrible. Let's look at one example: to eat. The English I eat, she eats, we eat is mangio, mangia, mantuo in Italian. Now expand that to a typical 2-4-page list of variations one measly verb out of thousands. And it feels like an insurmountable task. In reality, most people aren't bad at languages. They're bad, like me, at memorizing boring, zero gratification tables that make EMV forms look sexy. This is where helping verbs, auxiliary verbs come in. Thank God. If I hadn't discovered them, I never would have learned any languages. They're the ultimate cheat. By memorizing a few verbs and a few tenses, you get access to all verbs. It opens up the entire language in a matter of 1-2 weeks. To illustrate, let's look at simplified versions of my 4 primary sentences with Italian. Just notice that the verb mangiare doesn't change. I must eat. Ho paisano di mangiare. I want to eat. Voglio mangiare. I'm going to eat tomorrow. Vado mangiare domani. I can eat. Non posso mangiare. Literally, I am unable to eat. All I need to memorize are the conjugations for a few verbs: to have, to want, to need, etc. And I can slap the infinitive or to form of any other verb on the end. I want to eat, I'm going to read, I need to drink water, etc. Point 17. If you learn the auxiliary verbs in your target language, plus the all-important to be, to have, to do, and to go, you can very quickly express any idea. 1.8. Just see the following chart. Kickstarting 9 languages with 4 sentences. Imagine me teaching you soccer through books. I insist you memorize the physics of each possible shot over 1-2 years before we get on the field. How will you do? Well, first, you'll likely quit before you ever touch a ball. Second, when you get on the field, you'll have to start from scratch, turning the paper knowledge into practical knowledge. Looking for the helping auxiliary verbs and any skill, those magical crutches that allow you to kick the ball as early as possible, is fundamental to becoming a learning machine. The grammar of cooking, as we'll see in the next chapter, has exactly 3 helping verbs that will put everything into hyperdrive. Assignment, learning to taste. Nothing would be more tiresome than eating and drinking if God had not made them a pleasure as well as a necessity. Voltaire, is this basil? No. This is basil? No. What is this? Come on, you know this. No, I don't. It's basil. Basil. I must have asked my girlfriend 20 times on 20 occasions if the herb I was eating was basil. I just couldn't remember the goddamn plant. Smell it, taste it, draw it, nothing worked. She found it rather amusing, cute even, kinda like the kid in Jerry Maguire. Did you know the human head weighs 8 pounds? Ha. I found it infuriating. Like many people, I'd watched the Food Network for 1-2 hours a night after work to unwind, but I've never made a single dish. Now that I was going to be using ingredients, I needed to be able to recall them like song lyrics. I needed a working vocabulary. I started with the most basic of basics, which, I will admit, I had to look up. Herbs. Herbs are from the leaves and stems of plants. Spices, on the other hand, are from the root, bark, and seeds. 19. Looking for data to soothe my ego, I found out that I wasn't alone. Flavor illiterates are everywhere. In 1986, National Geographic sent out scratch and sniff samples to subscribers, asking them to categorize 6 common odors, and 1.4 million people responded. The best performers, young adults, averaged barely over 50% correct. Women scored slightly higher than men, but everyone was piss poor. What worked for me? Out of dozens of approaches I tried, there were only a few that actually helped me learn flavors. I suggest the following in order, but feel free to dabble. 1. Smell food like a dog. 2. Literally deconstruct your food. 3. Leverage non-tongue taste. 4. Isolate the basics. 5. Try unusual food combinations. 1. Smell food like a dog. Let's try an experiment. Get a few jelly beans of different flavors, cherry, root beer, coffee, whatever. Avoid anything with strong sour or hot characteristics. Now close your eyes, pinch your nose shut, and eat them one at a time. Try to guess the flavors. If you prefer, get 2 glasses,